Hello, and welcome. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. So good to have you here together with us again this evening. We're here at a different time, and we had a bit of a meeting of the minds. You see, the writer got together with the editor of the videos, who consulted with the guy who does the promotion stuff, and they came to the guy who's on camera, and we decided that we need to change the schedule. So what we're going to be doing is coming to you here in the live stream 3 times a week. So it'll be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Because also the thinking was in that meeting of the minds that 9 o'clock is a little bit late. So I hope that works for you. We're going to stick with this schedule. I hope that that is something that will make it easy for you to come and participate. Got a bit of exciting news for us, and that is that here on our webpage, what is up here on the screen right now, very excited that now we've had the web page up here for about 2 years, I guess. And we have now had hits to our web page, our resource center, from 99 different countries. Just last week, we picked up Moldova, Paraguay, and Sudan. So we've got visits from 99 different countries. And one of the things I'm seeing is people are coming and they're making use of the resource center. They're going there and looking at the documents. They're watching the videos. You all are doing that. So very excited to have those hits coming to the web page. I hope that it's a useful resource for everybody. So we've had visits, basically, when I break it down, from Algeria to Zimbabwe. and I don't know how many countries there are in the world, but I'm pretty thrilled that we've had visits from 99 of them. What I want to take a look at tonight, starting off, is from the Gospel of Matthew, and this is the season. Here we just had Epiphany. That's January 6th. We just had that. This is the time of year when we think about the wise men and their visit to Jesus. And I was thinking about this, and then I saw a couple stories in the news, one of which we will be touching on, that to me just ties right in with what this account here from Matthew 2:11 to verse 21 talks about. So I want to read that and talk about it as we go through, and then you'll see how the news story we're going to touch on ties in with that. So this is the wise men. They've already been to Herod, and it says, "And going into the house, they came to Bethlehem. The star went on before them. They saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way." Just one note there. How do you think that very faithful man, Joseph, and his exceedingly faithful wife could afford to go down to Egypt for 2 years and stay there until the angel tells them to come back? Well, God provided. He provided through the Magi, through the wise men. They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and all 3 of those commodities are of great value. God provides, God takes care. Verse 13, "Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, 'Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child, to destroy him. And he rose, and took the child and his mother by night, and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." It is a recurring thing that we see in the scriptures. God tells his people, these faithful people, he tells them to do something, and they do it. He tells them to go, and they go. Abraham did that when he left Ur of the Chaldeans. God told him to go. He didn't even know where he was going, and he went. And here, in the middle of the night, an angel appears to Joseph, just as it had, telling him, "Don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for what is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. Rise and take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there." And what did he do? He rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt. God spoke, and Joseph was obedient to God's direction. He was faithful. Faith is stepping out. Faith is moving in the direction that God would have you move. And in this instance, this was no small thing. Go to Egypt. They didn't have a car. They still had a donkey, but it was a long way to go. And Joseph kind of gets overlooked. We overlook Joseph because by the time Jesus is in his ministry, when he's 30 years old, Joseph is gone. Joseph had passed away. But Joseph was an exceedingly faithful man, and every time God spoke to him and told him to do something, he sent his angel and told him to do something, he did it. He did it. Obedience. In the Gospel of Matthew, we see again and again, this was to fulfill. Matthew's gospel was written to a Jewish audience, and so he's always pointing out the things that these different Old Testament references are a fulfillment of. And he says, "Out of Egypt I called my son." That is from the book of Hosea, the 11th chapter, the first verse. And people get kind of confused by this, what this means. Here it is in a nutshell. We could go into it at length, but we don't have the time. God called his first son, the nation of Israel. He birthed them in the Exodus. They had been formed there in Egypt. And what was it he told Pharaoh? "Let my son go. Let my son go." And when Pharaoh wouldn't do that, it was Pharaoh's son who paid the price in the firstborn in all of Egypt. But that's "out of Egypt I called my son." So as the nation of Israel came out of Egypt, so also Jesus was going to, in his return as an infant, come out of Egypt. Now, this is the heart of the matter I started looking at, but I thought we ought to look at more of it because it's the Word of God, and we can never look at too much of it. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time he had ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation. Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. This is one of those prophetic passages, and Rachel was buried there in Bethlehem, in Ramah. That's why she's the one who's weeping in this figurative expression. People of the Old Testament must have wondered what in the world this was talking about. No one had a clue, no one knew, no one understood until this happened. And then it was clear that this is what this passage had prophetically foretold so very long ago. And we need to keep that in mind. We see different things in the book of Revelation. We're working our way through the book of Revelation right now, ever so slowly. I've got to get chapter 18 out sometime soon. there are things in the book of Revelation that we don't understand fully what they mean. And we can have an idea, and it might seem to be a good idea, but we have to be open to the reality that at some point in the future, something could happen, something could go down that we say, oh, that's a very clear fulfillment of what that is talking about. So just a little insight in the application of prophecy. Herod, he was mad because the wise men tricked him. By this time, Herod was a little bit mad, period. Herod was not a nice guy. He had killed, I think, 2 of his own sons. He was a shrewd political operator. He was a really good king. He could operate. He had Palestine just humming by the Roman standards. They were pleased with him. But what he does here he didn't want the Messiah to come. He did not want him to be born. He did not want him, because just as the Pharisees and the Sadducees would later not want Jesus to take away their position, so also this was the case with Herod. He was the king of the Jews. He wasn't really even Jewish. He was the king of the Jews, and he didn't want competition, and he did not balk at killing these innocent little children. In the church calendar, this is called the slaughter of the innocents. And we don't know how many children died. We don't know how many he killed. He did so ruthlessly and without concern for anyone. It's just one of those things, and we've read it so many times, we've heard it so many times, we don't really think about it that much. It's hard for us to get, when we do stop and think about it, it's hard for us to get our minds around how wicked and evil this is. He just had children slaughtered. He cast a wide net in hopes that he would get the ones for whom he was looking, the one for whom he was looking. And because God was active, because God was doing what God was doing, because God was working his plan of salvation, Herod, for all his might, for all his cunning, for all of his political savvy and ruthlessness, was going to fail. He wasn't going to succeed. And that's an important thing for us to keep in mind, that God fulfills his plans in spite of what the evil powers that be may do and accomplish. And that takes us to this story. This is the news piece that got me thinking about Herod, and the timing of it just lines up. And we're not going to go through all the details of the story. The description will be, the link will be in the description, or you can just go to CNBC and type South Carolina Supreme Court abortion. It's what I did when I went to go back and look for it, and it pops up. South Carolina Supreme Court overturns state 6-week abortion ban as unconstitutional. Now, it is such a strange state of affairs. You know, we just had the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade. Now there's all this stuff going on at the state level, and exactly how this law plays out in relation to what went on with the Supreme Court, I don't know. That's not why I put the story here. The politicians and the powers that should not be but are going to do what they are going to do, serving the masters whom they serve. What I was struck by as I looked at this, and I always am when I read news stories from the mainstream media on abortion, the killing of the unborn, is the glee with which they celebrate death. It makes them happy. They celebrate, like Herod with the slaughter of the innocents. They celebrate it. They employ Orwellian doublespeak as they talk about rights, a woman's right to choose, as a license to kill the most vulnerable. I don't know if in this world of sin, this kind of thing will ever be stopped. I have my doubts, but I guess it struck me as there's nothing new under the sun. Satan always hates what God loves. It is a very helpful thing to keep in mind. It's not a happy thing to keep in mind, but it is a truth to keep in mind that Satan hates everything God loves. He hates God's creation. He hates marriage. He hates the family. And he absolutely hates children. And that is why the world is run by pedophiles. And that is why nothing is done about all of the sex trafficking that goes on and the abuse of children, because the one whom they serve is all about the very thing that they practice, and they have no intention or inclination to stop it. I had another thing I wanted to touch on, and this was something that kind of popped in my head last week. I don't have a story, a headline to pop up for it, but it's something we might start doing on a fairly regular basis. And we're going to caption this section. We're going to title this section Missing Headlines. Missing Headlines. Because the way we're all hopefully aware of how the news cycle works. It's one story after another. They just bombard you with things. And then all of a sudden, and we don't even notice, they're not talking about that anymore. It shifted to something else, and it is a never-ending game on their part. It is a never-ending game of distraction. Just keep them looking over here, over there. It's like a photographer. I'm thinking of, because I'm going through photographs of my children when they were young and scanning things, how a photographer will get the child, he'll wave a toy over here and the child will look. And then if he waves it over here, they'll look that way, and they can get different angles. The way we are distracted, they just move from one story to another. So the thing that I noticed that was gone out of the news is nobody's tweeting about Twitter anymore. Remember the Twitter files? Remember all that damning information that came out as relates to the election process and what was going on with the FBI and the major social media outlets and all of the data from Twitter that Elon Musk, that champion of truth, the guy who is a living, breathing, rocket-flying propaganda machine, Elon Musk was having his company put out. They put it all out there, and then boom, it's gone. Not a story. Go check your news feed. And if you see something, send it to me. I'd love to see it, but you're going to have to dig, because I looked around. It's all gone. They moved the attention. It's a 3-ring circus, and the attention went to the center ring where we had the election of the Speaker of the House that went on and on and on, and that just played out like there were 2 clown cars that crashed into each other, and a parade just poured out of them, and it was nonstop news coverage of that. I call it the McCarthy subterfuge, and away from the Twitter stuff we go. And the distracted child, or like the dog in that one movie, What Was It Up, who squirrel and look over there, they're not going back to the other stories. It's done. It's gone. It's moved off the front page. And they do it again and again and again. They wave the toy and it squeaks and the puppy looks that way. And that's it. They move on. They move on. I decided today I was just going to look through places like Fox News and CNN to look at the news there rather than going through the news on my helpful websites page, which I do myself do. I'd still read the news, and I encourage you to do. But this was a headline on Fox News, apparently competing with the NFL. Prince Harry was on 60 Minutes last night. Prince Harry's top 5 60-minute bombshells. I have to say, and this is something that has been true for me since I was in high school, the fascination with the royals is beyond my comprehension. I don't get it. Why everyone is so enamored with these odd people who have been marrying their cousins for generations. We supposedly fought a war of independence and are free from them, but we're not free from them. We're not free from the royals. Great Britain isn't free from the royals. And just as a note, if you think that the royals don't really have a great deal of power in the true governance of Great Britain, then you're sadly mistaken and you don't understand how that political game is played. But the royals, ever since Princess Di and Charles got married, I was in high school at the time. It was on TV. Everybody was watching it. I walked out of the house and went to work. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why we worship them. At another level, there are always these different levels. Just the, okay, I'm an American middle class, middle America guy, and I look at that stuff and I go, who cares? Okay, but on another level, and no, I'm not going to discuss the top 5 60-minute bombshells. You'll have to go to the article and read it for yourself. At a different level, I see it this way, and this is the level where there is clarity and understanding. The royals, the Pope, about whom there is also great adulation and adoration and praise every time he steps into this country, even by people who aren't anything like Catholic. The royals, the Pope, the kings of the earth. And who are the kings of the earth? The ones who can be seen? It's Gates, it's Bezos, and it's the walking psyop, Musk. These are the rulers of this realm. They are at least the rulers who are out front. As I often say, the true rulers whose coat of arms, along with the British royal family, their coat of arms is on my Rubik's Cube of shame that plays at the end of the opening of this show. They are the rulers of this earth. And all you have to do to know that, even if you don't dig in and understand how things really work and all of that, they're put in front of you constantly. They influence what you think. And yes, the royals are maybe in a slightly different category because they're used for a great deal of distraction, but they are put out there constantly because they are the ones who are in power. And whether people, I'm just talking about the masses, realize it or not, they are worshipped. They are worshipped as the lords of this earth, and that's not going to change. There will be no awakening to that. It is part of the great deception that comes with the end times. Next story. Let's have some war. Let's have some war, because you can't have enough war. Lindsey Graham. Oh, now I've got the...
Ready for peace talk.
They're ready for peace talks. The Fox News story started playing. Startled me, wondering who was in my headset. Lindsey Graham calls on Biden to supply heavy, modern tanks to Ukraine for war against Russia. Heavy, modern tanks. We only have one heavy, modern tank. It's the M1A2, I think, Abrams tank. They cost a fortune. They are lethal killing machines, and there isn't a single soul in Ukraine who even begins to know how to operate or service one of them. But think about this. Think about this. This war they seem to want to escalate it. And just when you think it's starting to fizzle out, and there was actually a brief peace thing over the holidays. Here we come with Lindsey Graham, supposedly a Republican. If they're and I know there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. They just wear different lapel pins. But Lindsey Graham, supposedly one of the conservative guys, urging the president to give them M1 Abrams tanks. And I'll ask this question. That's where I go every time with this. Who out there knows what the war in Ukraine is about? And if someone is to raise their hand and claim that they do, I will ask this. Who knows Russia's stated reason for going into Ukraine? And don't think that I'm taking Russia's side. There are a lot of people out there who want to spin Putin as some kind of a hero. He's a World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab kindergarten graduate himself. He's one of them. He's playing a role. But why did they go into Ukraine in the first place? Do we even know? And I know what Putin said as to the reason as to why they were going in. They went in because there are ethnic Russians in the eastern part of Ukraine who have been basically under siege from the Ukrainian tyranny that goes on there, because Ukraine isn't this bastion of democracy. And they've been under siege and abused and for quite some time. And there are countless bioweapons labs in Ukraine. That's why Putin says he went in. But why is it we don't hear that from our American media? We only hear stories like this, that Lindsey Graham calls on Biden to supply heavy modern tanks to Ukraine. We only get the rah-rah when Zelensky, who's an actor, when Zelensky comes over here wearing a t-shirt like he's some common guy and doesn't own a suit and asks for billions of dollars, and guess what? He gets it. I did a video a while back, and everything in it is still germane. I will put the link in the description below when this video is done. It's called Still Waiting for Honest Journalism About Ukraine. And the only place to find anything that approaches unbiased, honest journalism is to find some of these little independent operator news guys who put their lives at risk and go over there to try to really investigate what's going on. But if the cause is so just, if it's so worthwhile, then why don't we hear anything about the real details of what the war is about? Just food for thought. And as much as anything, that's why I do this. I'm just encouraging people to think. I thank you for watching. I pray that what we're doing here is a blessing. I encourage you, come check out our webpage. And if you know somebody who lives overseas, send them the link to our website. Maybe they'll go there. Maybe they live in one of the countries that has not yet visited our decodingthedeception.com resource center. And I do encourage you, consider doing a couple things. If you see a news story that you think's interesting, something that I would do well to consider and maybe include here in the broadcast, you can go right up here to contact us. It's a simple form. You can fill that out and send it to us. Also, I encourage you, prayerfully consider supporting this ministry. We're looking for people to join us in what we do. The more support we get, then the more we are able to do, the more content we are able to produce. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. God bless, and have a great day.